Welcome to episode 25 of the Service Course Report. My name is Ed Philbrick. I'm joined by Kurt and Darren Stockton. Today we're recording on April 10th, 2026. Um, wow, it's property tax day in San Diego County. Income tax day is coming up quick, and Sea
Next week.
Otter is next week,
Yes.
a more important date. Um,
Unless you owe property tax or income tax.
I think we all owe some income tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are the Service Course Report. We're 25 episodes into this. We started last summer. We're approaching the 1 year mark. This will be the second time going to Sea Otter. So we look for running into everyone next week, and we'll be covering the Life Time Grand Prix on Thursday morning, starting bright and early in the pits. So we will be live with little chunkets coming out on Instagram, WhatsApp,
Junkets, I like that.
wherever you want to get your media. So we'll try and be fast and first. Lifetime announced that they are live streaming the event to join Leadville and Unbound. So they'll be live streaming on YouTube, which should be interesting. And we'll hear all about the side-by-sides affecting the race. Hopefully they'll
Yeah.
use an e-motorcycle so we don't have to hear too much about moto slipstream drafting.
Right.
It's now the topic du jour. Like, if you really know about bike racing and you're really on the inside, you can pick out exactly where the moto is and how the moto is impacting the racing. Francesco Moser used a helicopter to impact his racing. So
Yeah. That took a little more coordination than just
Yeah.
jumping on the vehicle riding by. But hey,
Much to Fig Newton's chagrin on that one.
cheaters going to cheat and haters are going to hate. So
yeah. So we'll be podcasting Thursday afternoon from 3 to 4. Probably not live. Well, we might kick it live to YouTube, but we hope to have some guests from the race or talk about the race. So if you're interested in performing well and being in the top 10 and getting the right to be on the Service Course Report live from the Media Center, you
That's
have
right.
to find us and look for us in our t-shirts and our stickers.
Yeah.
And bring your sponsors to the booth. It's a real privilege. We're going to be competing head to head with the Cool Down, so they got nothing on us.
That's right.
And we are on Spotify for video, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts soon. Supposedly this month we will have video there as well. So sometimes we need to remember to talk about what we're describing or showing in video, because some
Right.
people are still consuming us with audio. So last week we talked about the Goo Goo Dolls and Iris. And Dad, what were you doing in the 1990s? DS, what were you doing in the 1990s? Because we missed you last week.
I know I missed that, and I started listening to the pod, and I'm like, oh man, I got to talk about this on the next pod, because KS's stories are just, both of your guys' stories are so good, and KS and talking about being over at Tour of Luxembourg and Tour of Swiss. And so it was funny. I was thinking, Kurt had found this great photo, which we'll show here in a little bit, of a picture from Course States, and it was a picture of you and Kenny, who's still our good friend, and racing without helmets. And it got me thinking, oh, here we go. Yeah. So this great photo right here, pulling it up, right? So you and Gogolski have helmets on. Everybody else, Carter, that's Kenny on the left there, Alexi, Scott McKinley with the Bole headband. We were positing that maybe that was Bjarne Riis due to his hairline back there. Maybe Lethierry with,
I think that's Dave Lettieri right there,
Yeah.
right behind Kenny.
and
Maybe
then is
Matt
that
Eaton?
like, yeah, Eaton, yeah.
Maybe.
So anyway, it got me thinking about how of the 90s, and I was thinking about all the stuff that I did in it, and how in 1990 I was 21 years old. My birthday is the end of October, so I had turned 21 at the end of 1989. And so this is a 1990 racing season. I'm 21 here, and this was a race at the end of the year down in Fashion Island. We had a pro criterium series for a couple of years where it was 3 races. It was DC, Fashion Island, and Minneapolis. And that year, whoever had the best points in all 3 was the pro criterium champion. It was one of the few times it wasn't a 1-day race. And so they had this amazing race down in Fashion Island. And KS, you were at the Tour of Mexico. I didn't go.
Correct.
I got flicked from going to that trip, which I really wish I should have gone. But this race ended up working out really well because it was just me and Kenny. And I had not had great form for a lot of the year, but I came on at the end of the year and we were on the opposite end. And so Kenny ended up quitting the race, which means I didn't have to split with him. So I got to keep all my cash. But this was coming up at the top U-turn right here. And those are a couple people from Subaru Montgomery team. That's Bart Bowen. I feel like that's maybe Mike McCarthy.
I
Oh,
agree.
in there. Maybe
Kind of looks
McCarthy
like
there.
his style right there, how he used to sit on the bike as he was like
Yeah.
a peer of mine. And then, we
Very
got some other
upright.
people. Yeah, we got some other people further back. And so if you notice, this is 1990. This was the last year, and I was thinking about this to start the decade that you could actually race without a helmet in America. Starting the next year, uh, the hard shell rule had worked its way into
Right.
pro cycling.
Not that
Yeah.
one.
We'll get that
Wait,
a little bit
No,
later.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
couple of things about that race that you can round out a little bit was
Yes.
that race was really queued up for Le Mans. Like he rode in a
Right.
Coors Light jersey that day.
Yeah.
Um, you notice he had a pretty big relationship with DuPont at the time, so you'll
Right.
notice DuPont was a
There's
sponsor.
DuPont
It's
banner. Yeah.
TWA on the side. But that race was really queued up for him coming to America.
Absolutely. And I mean, think about that when you think about corporate sponsors of a race. You have an airline, you have DuPont, which obviously was also. Now, I think in 1990, the East Coast race might have still been the Tour de Trump in 90. It was maybe 91. I know for sure 92 it became Tour DuPont. There's the DuPont advertising banner we're talking about in the back corner. And so then here's me coming out of that turn, and you can notice. So it was a muggy hot day down there, and I started with my helmet on because it kind of freaked me out to race without one. I'll be honest. That's Frankie Andreo, Zanoli. I'm not sure who's way bent over in the yellow. We were trying to pause if that was Le Mans, but it wouldn't have been because he would have been in a Coors jersey. I think that's maybe Kwiatkowski behind him. Uh,
Or Christoph Vietar, maybe.
Vietar, yes, yes,
Vietar,
yes,
yeah.
not Kwiatkowski. Yeah,
Polish rider.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kwiatkowski is current. I'm 20 years ahead of the current fast Polish rider. Yeah, so me coming out of the corner, and the cool thing about these photos
25.
is I didn't even know. Ed, you took these photos, and I can't remember. It wasn't like we got together before the race or even knew what was going on. We were living in different places or whatever. And I didn't even know that you had taken the photos. And we came around after the sprint and came around this U-turn. So the race was technically over and came around. I looked and saw you. And I remember we high-fived as I went by. Like you leaned your hand out and we slapped it. And so I think it's cool that you are actually the one taking these photos of us racing. And then here we are 30, almost 6 years later. It would be this summer, checking out these photos. So scroll over to that next one, KS. So
Yeah,
this
I
one,
haven't
even though it's
seen these pictures since then.
yeah, even though it's a little blurry, unfortunately, I can say that I do actually have a photo of me racing without a helmet. KS, you have a bunch from course dates, but this is my first year as a pro and my only year without the helmet. But by then, if you look back, it looks like hardly anybody's got a helmet on, even though it's a bit blurred out.
Yeah,
But that was
Gioli.
yeah,
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 that looks like
yeah. That's
Gaggioli
Gage
right
right behind. You could tell the hair and those white shoes with the red toes.
there.
He was
What
the
do you wear,
first
like
guy to wear white
Luigi's?
shoes.
Do we? Yeah, and his socks look white too, huh? I don't see any color there. He's the trendsetter.
Did he have an entourage at the finish?
Maybe not quite.
Well,
That
the
was
socks.
a land shark frame that I got repainted and I just every once in a while you would make the mistake of telling Slada when he said, which I did on this time, maybe you called a mistake. He goes, "Oh, what do you think for paint job?" And I said, "I don't know, surprise me." And it came and I looked at it and he said his inspiration was his wife, if I remember correctly, was the school teacher, but he said he took it based off some drawings that kids had done. It was just like big swatches of color and stuff like that. But nice steel bike, bar end shifters, we were still using them. KSU had got the first STI levers due to your pro chump status, but I was still on the trusty bar ends at that point. So yeah, so I thought it was kind of funny that I started off the 90s racing in Lycra with no helmet, and I finished out the 90s, having gone through an entire road career. Oh, wait, here we go. Here's a
There's one more.
91 shot too. So yeah,
So
next year,
everyone
look,
with
we're all
helmets.
everyone with helmets on. And I also remembered thinking that the media coverage was a little bit biased because they literally named every single person in the photo except me. And back in
Yeah.
those days, it was hard to get a good shot, be in a good shot in Velo News. And I got ninth that year at Course Dates, top 10, which was my best finish. And I was like, damn, I got all the road at the front enough to be in the shot. And they didn't even bother to see who I was. Thanks,
Yeah.
John Wilcoxon. But a
Although
lot
it
of the,
does,
yeah,
I would say it also appears that they in the text down here they
they
named
call.
Dan Fox, but
Yep.
that's Matt Eaton right there.
Medj.
So they didn't get that one right either, right? But Zanoli, who won
Yeah.
that day racing for Tulip, Phil Anderson, yeah. And then you were also talking about you look just you and Phil and Zanoli have full zip jerseys,
Right.
right? Got
Yeah,
that.
full zip jerseys. And that was Chevrolet LA Sheriff. And those were, I think that was Aussie clothing. And we didn't have any jerseys that were anything more than just a low zip. And so we actually went and took them to, I believe it was Ablett's here in town, which is still here in Santa Barbara. Well, I'm down in Cart, but up in Santa Barbara, Ablett's, which was a cleaning place, but they also did alterations and took them in. And I said, I want a full length zipper. And they didn't have anything that was full length. Everything was like already in two pieces, but they basically put one that zipped all the way down to the waistline. And I had that built specifically for Course Dates because the year before when I raced it, which was my first year, it was just so hot and humid, which I struggled. And I was like, man, I need to get a full zip for that. So yeah, 91. So this was part of the
This
90s
photo is
jersey.
quite the dichotomy. You've got Eaton with frame shifters. He's reaching for it. You've got
Right.
STI on Phil Anderson. You've got you with bar ins. So there was three
Yeah.
types of shifting going on there. So probably
Yeah.
people with grip
No,
shift.
you've
The
got
first
STI.
shrink.
DS has STIs on there.
Do I? Oh
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
91. You're right. I would have had STIs. 90 I had.
No,
Yeah, we
91,
got
you would
some.
have been on Campy, right?
Nope, that was 92. That was the first year
Uh,
on yes, this was the Shimano year of Chevrolet Le Sheriff 91, which I think was because that team was pretty small. It was just Pierce and Jamie Polinetti, and then KS and we came on board and kind of picked it up. And I think that the Shimano sponsorship was probably just because we got personal stuff from Wayne is probably how we ended up on those. But yeah, you're right. 91, I did have the STI levers by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you look at Nate Reese, he's got the lightweight climbers version. He just has a right bar end,
Yes.
but the big ring is still a frame shifter.
Yeah.
And that was those early Subaru days. Maybe they were still on Merlins at that point, titanium
I
bikes.
think you're right. Yeah.
Titanium was the lightweight. And, yeah, it's always fun. Like you look at this and then you dig into the tech a little bit more,
Yeah. Dude.
The,
Yeah. Go ahead. I just
I was
got to
gonna
give
say,
myself some props. If you could really zoom in and look, I think 30 years before Pogacar, DS has spiky hair wafts coming out of the top of the helmet vents
oh
right
yeah,
there.
look at
So
that.
just want to
Yeah, you're right. In the
say,
Pixelated.
first generation time helmet.
Yeah.
yep,
Um,
yep,
and
those had come out the
Phil
year
has one
before.
of the very first specialized helmets, which is kind of ironic. He's, Eddie Merckx Motorola with a specialized helmet.
Right, right. That is true, but there weren't that many people that made them. Zanoli and
Mhm.
Reese, they got bells on.
Yeah. Does
Yeah,
A
he?
lot
bell
of bells.
helmets. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's a good one.
So
So
from starting with
from
helmets, right?
yes, yeah. So this is getting into helmets, and then this is how I finished up my 90s. Was I'd already got done racing road bikes, transferred into mountain bikes, realized early I was not a cross country racer, and ended up on downhill with full length gear, padding, elbows, knees, body armor, full face helmet, goggles, and if you would set that bike level and look from the side, a seat that was far lower than my handlebars. So I think all of those, slide from the beginning of the 90s towards the end of the 90s. But man, I sure had a lot of fun with every single stage of that along the way. That was
What
a big,
Maxxis tire is
yeah,
that in the mud?
that is the Mofo. Excuse me, which was before Maxxis really had any good tires. And so this was the opening round at Big Bear. And it was, I think, still maybe one of the biggest El Nino years ever. And it snowed in May that I actually was driving up and they turned me around. I had to go back down to whatever it is, Fontana or whatever, sat at the bottom of the hill and go in and find a pair of chains to put on the back tires of my truck to be able to drive up. And actually, our first day of practice was canceled. So that's downhilling at Big Bear, and that's snow in the background. Like it snowed, I think like a foot. And I remember I was clueless. Big Bear, it was like pumice and sandy. And if you take that type of terrain and put some nice, just low moisture in it, not like it dumped rain and there's a rain rut down the middle, it would be like great traction. They had this new tire, the Mofo, and I'll never remember Rob Sears. We were going over, KS and I, along with Kenny Adams, who was in the previous photo, and we were going over for a 2-race trip, as we dubbed it, the gastronomy tour, over to Italy and France. And I just remember going, oh, these new mofos, dude, if they worked in the mud here, they're going to be great. This is all I'm taking to Europe. I just had like a stack of mofos I was taking over there, hard pencil rubber compound. Maybe not. It was middle by then. And I remember Rob Sears, who had raced in Europe before, he's like, yeah, man, what do you got? What are you bringing? And I'm like, he's like, dude, you want to bring this and this? And I remember Deaton telling me bring grips, Ziploc bags, duct tape, and like zip ties. He had like a few key things to take. And Rob's like, what are you taking for tires? I'm like, dude, I'm taking these mofos. He's like, and I go, and dude, I don't need anything. These are great. And I can still just remember that look. He was just like, oh, this poor bastard. But he didn't want to tell me. And that started my tire design career, because I went over there and the tires were so bad I didn't qualify for either World Cup and refused to believe that I sucked that bad. So I started paying attention to tires that people were riding, and that was a shift that's carried on all the way to this day. So yeah, that was the end of my 90s. Started off just getting into pro road. I had been a stagiaire in '89 over at TVM in Europe the year before. Started my domestic pro road career in 1990, but finished up racing World Cups over in Europe on a downhill mountain bike. So pretty cool. Yeah.
Two things to round out. One is
Yes.
just your relationship with Maxis, but more urgently, I want to point out you rode how many world championships in the downhill for the United States?
I rode 2 world championships in the downhill for the United States. I rode one of my very first years, 1994, in Vail, and then ironically, all the way the last racing year of my career, which was in 2001, also in Vail. And the first, at Big Bear that year, the UCI rules used to be different, and if you were the host country, we got like 20 people in that year, that were in the worlds. But by the time '01 rolled around, it was legit, and I think we only got 6 or 7. We got one extra because Miles Rockwell had won the worlds the year before, and so I was like one of the top 7 guys and made the world championship team, which was in Vail, which was the 9/11 year at Vail. The Tuesday before worlds, we woke up to video of the towers burning and collapsing. So that was that was the arc there.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think it's important to round that out. You went over there and were failing to qualify, but eventually you represented the United States. So it's important for people to realize that you were a very accomplished downhill racer and very successful.
Yeah, thanks. And it's funny when you look back at stuff, I pride myself on the fact that I was at the top of skinny tire road cycling, and by the top, meaning up at the pointy end, I was a paid professional. Obviously, I wasn't like in Europe in the tour, but, had made it to a pretty high level with that. And then, and then was able to achieve the same thing in downhill. So thanks. It's always good sometimes to have somebody close by point out something, something good like that.
Something good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was definitely, that was Dragon. And Kenny was the sports marketing guy for Dragon, which was my longest running sponsorship of any kind until I can't remember the name of the Swiss company bought Dragon in like 2020 or 21 or something like that. And my glasses sponsorship ended, but I think it was 26 years from when it started, where I was actually paid and getting bonuses until at the end. Obviously, I was just getting free glasses from Kenny. But yeah, there's my 90s
There's
art
that.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And speaking of the 90s, because I have a little follow up. Last week, when Zed and I was speaking about the adventures in Luxembourg and going to the Tour of Switzerland, And some of you may remember the cycle log training diary. This is the one I used in 1991. And so I had talked about that drive from Luxembourg to Switzerland.
Oh, right.
And so I have my entry from June 17th, 1991. And it says, drove Luxembourg to Switzerland with the Czech version of Laurel and Hardy. Drove all day. And that was those two guys I drove with me.
Oh, right.
And it was like, yeah, for those of you that don't know Laurel and Hardy, it could have almost been like Dumb and Dumber as far as just
Correct.
their rapport, and it was, we're lost. We're just driving there trying to take routes where we don't have to pay to go on the auto route. And I realize, that I'm putting my faith in these guys that basically have no idea where we're going other than we're trying to get to Switzerland from Luxembourg. And eventually we made it. So yeah, that was, and I did, I have the entire box. So
Oh, nice.
the training log, in this particular one, there's a trove of great photos. So when I get to scanning some of these images, I'll be able to share those later. More 90s nostalgia, since I guess that's a trending thing right now. It might not be by our next podcast, but we'll make it that way.
I think it'd be fun to go back one time and all of us just like grab our training logs and bring them out, because it's pretty remarkable. Mine are actually at home. I thought they were down here, but the one thing that popped into my mind, I think I was looking at my training log from winter of 91 into the 92 race season, which would have been my best year, on the road. And it was like, I don't know, November, December. And I remember reading my training log. I'm like, no wonder we were like, you could achieve that level. We did so much even in the wintertime. Like the amount that I was riding, back then we were rollerblading for cross training. We were going to the gym. We were riding our mountain bikes up and down Romero. We were doing doing all this stuff. I was looking at it. I wish I had the time to train as much now as I did in the off season back then. That would be awesome.
Or train at all.
Yeah. I guess I just ride. That's a good point. I'll say I've been doing some training. I've had a little pointed, I'd say like some gravel rides as I started having some form coming back around, and I was trying to, it's funny, in the past going to Sea Otter, I would have been training hard because, I was racing downhill and dual slalom. And now I trained hard in a block leading up to Sea Otter just so I had enough fitness so that I could ride a whole bunch when I'm up there, and a cool place to ride and take advantage of it. So I guess I'm still training, but with durability and participation in mind as opposed to peak wattage.
There we go.
Yeah. That's the evolution.
90s. Yeah, I just had a thought as we were talking about this.
What's that?
Once we all locate those training logs, we need to find training rides that we all went on, and then read our individual entries are for the same day. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Well, can we get JT to dig up one of his training logs were always hilarious.
If he still has them. Yeah. I wonder
DK
if he
used to have
still
to
does.
sign off on his independent study PE form, and DK's like, what is he talking about?
Who are these people? Because we all had nicknames. We used to call Ed Ralph because that was your dad's name, but DK didn't know that, and he's just like, dude, I keep seeing, Ralph dropped me on the climb. Ralph was doing this, and I'm thinking, who the heck is this Ralph dude? How come he's not part of our, part of our crew?
Yeah.
I was looking at some old ones from those first years, and it was just hilarious. We got to bring them up, just like how we described rides and stuff like that, and just like sign language and math equations, this guy equals this guy. Oh yeah, I think that was one of them. Is there was a ledger. That's what DK said. He was signing JT's individual sheet, and then I think he was looking through his training log and looked in the ledger, and on the side it was like Ed equals Ralph, this guy is this, for our nicknames. And I think that's how we started putting it together. So we were definitely having some fun with it. Probably, more fun than typing on keys into a Training Peaks, training log these days. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that lingers around a lot, probably confuses our listeners at times, is there's quite a few nicknames for everybody that lurk out there. My original name might have been Ralph for my dad. I came from a science teacher, and I always got called Phil my entire life. I had a geometry teacher that called me Phil my entire semester, and I get called Phil 4 times a week now.
Phil Edbrick.
I get Phil Edbrick mail. But Phil Brico got
Yes.
changed to Frederico, which got shortened to Rico. So if you ever heard the
Yes.
word Rico, that's me.
That's
I've
you.
heard it a few times in the podcast, so you'll know that's me.
Rico and also Rico Suave, definitely, yeah. That'd be another. We have to do like, how you have your family tree? We need to have like a nickname tree for each of us that branches off and who came up with the name and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely our own independent language system at times.
Well, if you remember a one-hit wonder in the 90s who went by the name of Gerardo, he had
Yeah.
a song called Rico Suave. So,
Rico Suave.
yeah.
All right. So any
Yes.
free laps? I think I'm the only one.
Not me. You got a free lap. Ooh, you got multiple free laps here.
I
All
didn't
the
race.
way-
Yeah.
I didn't race last time, so I got no free laps.
All right. What are your free
So
laps? Ed?
we have a percentage of British followers on online and YouTube,
Nice.
wherever they're coming from, and they seem to be quite holding us accountable. So I was talking about the English speaking invasion that started probably best with Phil Anderson and Jock Boyer and Greg LeMond and then 7-Eleven. And I was giving those guys a little too much credit. The first British rider to ride the Tour de France was in 1903, Bill Burrell.
Bill Burrell.
And then he didn't finish. So
He was
the first
burly.
finisher was Charlie Holland. He finished in 1937. And
Oh,
then
nice.
Tom Simpson was the first
Right.
major British star in the 1960s. He was a stage winner and also world champion.
Right.
So
That's right. He was
there
world
was
champion.
quite a few English speaking riders before Lamond and Anderson and
Right.
Sean Kelly.
Before the ones that
Stephen
are
Rose.
stamped into our memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll take my free lap on that one, and we also appreciate the feedback and criticism. We're open to it. So
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
I agree with
let's-
that. When you're listening, let us know. No, I mean it's great because it's right. We start talking to maybe we get off on a subject that we don't have a whole lot of knowledge on, and there's plenty of people out there with a ton of knowledge. And there's this thing called the internet, which can be helpful in some things like that. So
And
awesome.
and like you say, KS, one of the ones you like to use is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Maybe if we get on
Yeah.
used mostly when your friends are trying to correct you mid-story, but also, if we get rolling on something, yeah, we want to talk about it, if we hit the inspiration. So if we have to backfill on some facts, no shame in that.
Phil Edbrick.
Phil Hedrick, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, some current pros are, they're not even really that privy to the Armstrong years, so they don't even have the context. And so our memories sort of start with the Phil Anderson, wearing the yellow jersey year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Le Mans winning worlds. We were up at the Giro del San Francisco Criterium, that one that was down by the waterfront that was a really long rectangle. And I remember as we were sitting on the start line to go race, that the worlds had finished over there and somebody had found out, and the announcer who was announcing for the race got on and just said Le Mans had won Pro Worlds. And I remember we were all just like, no way. That was huge, Yeah. Yep.
That was pretty cool.
That was an amazing one.
All right.
So anybody do any interesting rides? How about you, DS?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm the Crusher is back in action, or as I like to call it, the Drake, since it's a Mondraker. I'd had a wiring harness problem, which is not a Mondraker part. It's actually the third party battery part. And which I'm finding out, which was kind of interesting as I diagnosed it, because it's on my third one. Apparently there seems to be on the clip that goes into the motor, it seems like it can get contaminated with superfine dust or something, and that it erodes and it starts kind of like shorting it out. But I was just so busy over the holidays and other family life, and then also had a ton of gravel tire testing to do, and I'd just been loving the air that I had just slacked. It was on me on getting a hold of Mondraker. They were great. I mean, from the time I contacted them, I had my new wiring harness in a week. So that was pretty spectacular that it had to come from Spain. So I got that bike back rolling, and went out with Jonah and rode on Sunday, rode Romero, and then just went out on Monday again and did it again. And oh man, that bike is so good. It was a lot of fun. I hadn't been on it. It reminded me of when later years, we grew up riding motorcycles, and then in later years, we wouldn't ride all the time, or maybe sold a bike. And then when I bought my enduro bike and I would get back on a dirt bike and you first vroom, rev it up and start going, you're like, man, how come I haven't been doing this? And I got to say, that was exactly the feeling that I had on the Crusher, which my nickname, as a sidebar, so, we always give our bikes nicknames. And oh, wait, here we go. Yeah, we'll cue it up right afterwards. And so I called mine the Drake because I love Seinfeld, that show. And there's this whole episode with this character called the Drake. And since it's a Mondraker, I just wanted to call it the Drake. And Mika, my daughter, tells me, she's like, Dad, she's like, you can't call it the Drake. He's a pedo. Now I'll add allegedly, to remove us from any liability. And I go, yeah, but this is about Seinfeld and everything. She's like, Dad, the kids won't understand. You got to give that a new name. But for now, it's still the Drake. So for people who don't know the Seinfeld, oh, we have volume. Oh, maybe that's our tech glitch, getting some sound. Well,
Drake.
the Drake. Well, anyway, there if it doesn't come up with volume, maybe that's one that we haven't tried. They had this whole clip, this whole show about this guy, the Drake, and he was in favor, but some people didn't like him. And the Drake, who's the Drake? I love the Drake. Got to love the Drake. So that's where it came. But still working on a new nickname for the Drake, maybe to make it a little bit more, a little bit
So
more.
give me your
times.
quick story of Mondraker. There's a professional women's gravel. There's a few, top 30 gravel racers on Mondraker right now that, trickle out into social media and get some exposure. But give me your 30-second take on Mondraker and what their story is.
Mondraker started off, and they have been largely a mountain bike brand, and they've been around for decades, but mostly in Europe. They've only really recently made a push in the US, and they were the first company, and I believe it was when Fabian Burrell, two-time downhill world champion, and this is around 07, 08, just decided bike's got a 100 mil stem on there, 110 mil stem. We are going to make the front center 40 millimeters longer than everybody else and put a 60 stem on there. They were the first ones to pioneer really long, if you want to call it talk tube or long reach, to get the front wheel out in front of you, because it was posited as, on dirt that was better. And it was and is, and everybody followed later on, but they were the first ones to really bring that, into more like downhill bikes and enduro bikes. And they are an amazing design company. Their headquarters, you should go on their website and take the tour. Their headquarters in Spain is unbelievable how it's built. It's got a real design aesthetic, and they mostly do mountain bikes, of all different types, from downhill to elite level cross country. They have people in World Cups all across the board, and they, rolled out some newer gravel bikes of recent years in that Arid, which both Kurt and I had. My current gravel bike, that thing is fantastic. I absolutely love it. So that would be the history. And I'll say that Mondraker, the thing I love about them is when I look at the bikes, and like especially my enduro bike, that's what I have, an electric enduro bike, a 150 rear, 160 travel front, just the paint job and the style and everything. It would be if like a high-end design company made a bike, just like the aesthetic of it, and their quality really is pretty spectacular. I've been really happy with it so far. So I know that was longer than 30 seconds, but
Well, they appear to not be a direct consumer brand. They're through bike shops. Where is their
correct.
US headquarters? Boulder?
Their US marketing headquarters just moved from Boulder up to Santa Cruz. They were in Boulder for these couple of years, and I became a Mondraker dealer. It will be 2 years ago when they were just launching in America. And Eric Richter, who's a friend and colleague of both Kurt and ours from the mountain bike days, who did Giro Bell and has been woven in and out through probably so many jobs in the industry. He was the director of U.S. marketing, and that's where I got the connection with, and a couple other sales reps who rep them, who I had bought through for my retail business. So I got set up as a dealer and met the CEO and the head of design up at Sea Otter 2 years ago and talked to those guys about their bikes and everything. So yeah, I really like them. I like their style. I like the way that they do things. And thus far, their bikes seem to really fit with me in my mind and my idea of how I think design and geometry and everything and what works for me. So it seems like, Seems like yeah, not seems like, but actually do just really like their, their thought processes and their design.
Proverbial win-win
That's
across the
it.
board. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I
How about
I would
you,
agree.
Cadis?
Well, first I would say I agree with DS on that about the bikes with my experience so far in the last coming up on 6 months being on that arid gravel bike,
Damn.
and sticking to my guns, sticking with that shorter stem on that bike, and still getting the reach that I need to the levers. The SRAM levers that I have are a little different than my previous bike, and the bike just it rails. It's comfortable. For me, important, right? Like handling, not like I ride in big groups. We rode a little bit in some groups when we went, we did the bovine. I've done a little kind of quote group riding at a couple of these hopper events, but so I feel comfortable there, but also, equally comfortable on, floaty marbles on gravel roads, going flat, going downhill, or riding on single track. So, and speaking of that, I did get in a couple of great gravel rides this past weekend. Um, I guess maybe I've been training too. I was able to ride three plus hours
Uh-oh.
2 days in a row. So I don't
Secret
recall.
training, although it's not
Yeah,
secret
not
if
very
you tell us
secret.
about it, but secret when
Yeah.
it's happening. Yeah,
But
secret training.
I rode 2 days in a row and had what I would call good legs or not bad legs 2 days in a row. So like when I can have that, I'll take it.
For me.
A solo ride on last Saturday. So my buddy Chris was aerating his lawn, although he wasn't aerating. He got some other, I can't remember the name of the tool he had, but he's got a big lawn that he has to deal with. So I went and rode by myself. I did a longer version of the Nugget Loop from my gourmet gravel rides that I put on here in Nevada City. It's 32, 33 miles, 4,500 feet of climbing, because that's what it's like around here. And then I went out with him the next day, and I was like, maybe I could do 2.5 to 3. I don't know how I'm going to feel. And so we did a loop that gave us options. So we go right around Scotts Flat Lake and go up this climb called Caskey Road. And we get up high on Highway 20 at about close to 5,000 feet. And then we can basically take a trail and ditches all the way back to town. But we got to a point where we were like, hey, you want to turn off and do a little bit more? I'm like, yeah, all right. And he took me on this single track that I'd never been on. And it
Nice.
was like, I
Freshy.
think I've said it before, but we have like real gravel bike friendly single track in Nevada City. And this was just this flowy through the woods. There were berms, and we had some rain a little while back, and then it hadn't been too hot. So we had no dust and we had no mud. And it was like the traction is like those corners you can come into and grab a little rear brake and whip your rear end around. And then when you let off, it just hooks up. And we
Yeah.
did this whole single track, and it was fun. As I'm riding down, I'm like, I know the direction we're going. Like, where are we going to end up? Where are we going to end up? And we ended up at this three-way intersection, um, kind of coming in the opposite direction of the route we normally ride. And then we added some more onto that, and it was just like a perfect 2 days of riding. So that was, yeah,
Nice.
it put a big smile on my face. Legs were sufficiently tired, but I wasn't completely gassed, and yeah,
I have
staying
a,
after it. Yeah.
I have a question for you about the air and the handling. So the old bike, your Haley that you had, what length stem did you ride on that to get your position dialed?
120.
So you had a 120. I
Yeah.
would go between a 120 and a 30 on my old, felt. And so you started off, the large comes with the 80, but you went out to the 90, right?
Yeah.
Is
I
that,
went straight. I never even rode it with an 80.
you just
I
went
got
to
a
the,
90 for it. Yeah. And put that
so
on.
I wondered, like for me, when I first got on mine, because I went from a 130 or whatever I think I had on there to a 90. So you're talking about your handlebars come back 4 centimeters,
Yeah.
basically, let alone, the air is more raked out. It has a 70 head angle, whereas my felt has a 71.5. And so you think about where your handlebars are in relation to the front axle, right? The front
Yeah.
axle now is a lot further out on my Arid, which is part of the reason why I wanted to get it. But I noticed I had so much time on my felt and the balance of that with the long stem and where everything was that when I first started riding my Arid, especially going down a trail and hit a little like jump and hop and stuff, I was going off of everything and like looping out because of like where I put my balance, on the bike with the long stem, I was hanging back a little bit in relation to where the frame was. Um, and on and my weight was a little bit more over the front wheel. So I got used to that bias. And so when I was hitting stuff on my Arid, I was used to not putting too much pressure on the bars, because with the long stem that would like nose you down. But then when I was on my Arid, I was like kind of like flying high, like gooning it on everything, now not like I'm catching 10 feet of air, but even still, if you go in the air and you go to lean into a corner or something like that. And so I thought for me, that part of it actually took me a while. It took me like a couple months of riding to kind of get dialed. So I was curious if there was, since the bike is, yours isn't that big, only, well, I guess 3 centimeters, is a decent amount. If you noticed anything in the handling from that end.
I did. I mean, I don't jump as much as you do.
Right.
So I didn't have that looping out issue, but I did have to learn, to your point, that my weight was kind of where it needed to be without having to hang so much weight off the back of the bike.
Yeah.
Like with that longer stem, I definitely kind of hung my ass off the back of the saddle more, especially on descending or single track. And so it was getting used to that a little bit. Hand position on the bars, pretty much the same. And interestingly, I said a couple weeks ago, I went and rode that King Ridge Hopper, and I got myself that new, I haven't said it, but I got an Envy Melee road frame, and I built up a new road bike. So I've been riding the road bike and getting that dialed. And I got the newest SRAM red brake set with the levers are slightly different shape, that not only the lever itself, the blade, but also the hood. And I got that really comfortable. And I got back on my gravel bike and I realized I had my bars rotated up a little bit, or a lot more than I had on that road bike. And I went out and rode it on that Saturday, and I was like, man, I've got these things like they're pointing up to the sky. So actually, and I've been riding that since the end of October, since we went to Atascadero. And so I, after the ride on Saturday, I rotated my bars forward and got the levers down a little bit more. Cause I also realized that I was, like when I'd get out of the saddle in the drops, I'd hit my forearms on the tops.
Oh, right.
I had them rotated too much.
Right.
Yeah. You get like a bruise on the top of your forearm. And I was like, and I rotated those suckers forward, and I got out on the ride on Sunday with Foyt and rode it. And I was like, oh man, it's like just riding only that one bike and not going back to any of my other bikes and not having a reference point. But it was like, okay, I can still do that, and rotating them forward. Also, you notice if your bars are rotated up too much, it's hard to reach the levers from the drops. And I ride in the drops a lot. Like whenever I'm descending, I'm on the drops. Whenever I'm in single track, I'm on the drops. I don't ride on the tops that much, just not comfortable for me. Although it's more comfortable on the Arid because the weight's not so much over the front end. Like when you're out on your levers, you're further over the front end than you are in your drops. And just making those slight adjustments, I feel like I've got the bikes, pretty well dialed for two bikes that sit completely different, right? Well, I've got my reach the same and all of that. I set that Arid next to that Melee, and the Arid sits a lot higher just because the whole bike is taller, right? Just because of the design. And it did definitely, it took me a while. And I think I spoke about this, soon after I got that bike, that I needed to ride some of my familiar routes and ride some of the familiar stuff so that I could at least have that level of comparison, since I'm not swapping between bikes. Yeah, but it's that long center to front is definitely, it works really well for that. Yeah, I have not once have I even come close to losing the front end on that bike.
Knock on that wood.
Knock on whatever I got to knock on. But like the descent, I rode a familiar ride on Saturday, but this one descent down to the river they had bladed it, so it had been graded. And then they put new gravel down, and it wasn't the big road base. They put the little stuff down, the topper gravel that they finished the road with. And it hadn't been driven that much because we haven't had, river weather. So the cars haven't been driving. So it's super floaty, which is kind of fun. I know the descent, and I like that, but the bike was very stable doing that. Like never once did I scare myself, no pucker moments. So it was good.
Yeah. We were talking about stems. One thing that just popped back into my mind, I when I rode the Crusher, aka the Drake, on Sunday for the first time with Jonah, we decided to ride Romero. And so that one you park pretty much right at the bottom of the trail. Like sometimes I'll ride up Romero and go down Cold Springs. We park down at Pierre Lafon. So it's a 20-minute ride up and I go up and down. But, I haven't ridden that bike in 4 months. I looked.
4 months.
And I just rode it. Yeah, 4 months. I hadn't ridden it. It was right around Thanksgiving, or maybe it was early December. I checked, but yeah. And so I just Jonah met me. My van was parked right at the bottom, and it's like a 1 minute ride to the bottom of the trailhead, and then you're climbing the whole way up. And so we got up the top. We turn around, I go come down, and I drop my seat, and I go around the first couple of corners, and I'm like going in, and I've just been riding the air. And I also, like UKS, I just ride the drops whenever I'm going fast down a trail. And I was so used to that low position. I started down the trail on my crusher, and I was like, God, my bars seem really high on this, because they were up. Like then it felt weird at first, but then I just got through a couple, whoa, like fast and deep sections, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why they're high, and why I have them higher up. And then within 5 minutes or into the second half, I wasn't even thinking that the bars were high at all. But it was just funny, that initial thing from being so dialed on that crusher, but then having only ridden the gravel bike, which I only run about a centimeter of drop from the top of my saddle to the tops of my bars, and it's a shallow drop. I think now I'm going to get it wrong. I think those Explorers they're a 70 reach, but I think they're maybe a 65 drop. Does that sound right? Anyway, it's a pretty shallow drop. But anyway, it was just kind of funny that I got on like, dude, my bars are way high up. And for like a fleeting moment, I think, oh yeah, I should put the bars down on my mountain bike. And then, maybe that's some old trailings of my PSN, position sensitivity neuroses, from the cycling days, just trying to, the road bike days, trying to get in there and tell the dude, a 0.5 millimeter will make all the difference, but then after a couple of corners and steeps through some creek crossings, I was like, oh yeah, the high bars, this is the bomb. So that was my one other takeaway from riding.
Well, I would say that's why it's important to ride all the bikes.
That's right. Got to ride all those bikes.
Ride all the bikes, the gravel, the road, the all-road, the trail bike, the XCO bike. Got to keep your body used to them all.
Yeah.
Even the cruiser.
What about you, Ride Rico? What have you been doing for rides?
I rode a gravel bike with the Los Senderos Amigos for Scott's birthday on Saturday. It was the first time I'd ridden my gravel bike since BWR Arizona, so quite a while. It was a good ride, except we had one crash, which was not good. My friend JD, who raced downhill,
you sent us that clip.
He stalled out when he needed a little 180 power, and he fell on his elbow. So I rode his bike and my bike out, carefully. And he walked, and eventually we found someone who gave him a ride to the highway. And so that was a bit of a bummer. He's one of my main riding buddies. So
did he like twist it or something? Like it wasn't like he just whacked
a rock pile.
Oh, and just right on it.
Right. So we finished up the ride at my friend John's house, and did a little birthday celebration for Scotty, and we ordered some. They're vegan, so we ordered some Plant Power burgers and fries and shakes from a secret kitchen. So Plant Power, they have a few locations. They're vegan McDonald's, if you will. But they have a secret kitchen.
You're going to get the replies on that comment.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
McVegan. That's the new chain right there. The new trademark, McVegan.
So the vegan secret kitchen. So these secret kitchens, you can order your food and knock on the door. It's like a speakeasy, and they'll hand it out to you. So they got multiple brands that they're cooking for inside there. And now Secret Kitchen's probably not the quite trendy name. They might have another name. But, they're multiple brands. And so they got the packaging and so forth and the recipes or something. And then they do a lot of door dashing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I had the vegan Big Zac and Big Zac with jalapenos. Anyway, that was a good fun ride. Good to hang out with the buddies afterwards. The other riding I've been doing is, now that I have a mountain bike, everyone wants to show me these new trails. Oh, you've not ridden here. Oh, you haven't ridden here. So I've been
I'm
riding a lot with my friend Ryan Madsen. We went to Daly Ranch and rode after work, and that's just an amazing, basically a city park, which is this
right.
huge preserve um, with lots of trails there. And then last night we rode up Bernardo Mountain, which is a 1,100-foot mountain with a 360-degree view of all of North County. So you can see from Rancho Santa
Oh,
Fe to
nice.
Escondido to Rancho Bernardo from up there, and it's amazing. No trash, no graffiti, no bottled caps, no glass, nothing. It's just for some reason it's not real accessible or known.
Right.
Um, I feel bad sometimes naming it a little bit, but it's just not. Some people are really taking care of it, and not too much mountain bike action up there, which is sort of surprising. But it's really really fun. It was a lot like riding in Santa Barbara, very rocky on top.
Right.
So I kept saying, "Oh, this feels like old Romero."
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
What?
with
Well, I
quite
had
a
a
bit of
question, a little follow up there with
Yeah.
you,
yeah,
because we talked about recovery a little bit last week. Like, what are our recovery secrets in late 50s, or for me 60? What did you? I mean, first of all, I don't think that you probably eat vegan on any regular basis, right? So, did you notice anything finishing your day with a full vegan meal? How you felt? Did you sleep any better or worse? Did you?
Were
Is
you
there
hungry or
anything
not?
that you
Yeah.
noticed? Yeah. Did you wake up at 2 a.m. and need a bowl of cereal, or
Or a
was it?
hamburger patty?
Yeah. Or, yeah. I'm just I don't know if you even thought about that or if it even crossed your mind, but
Good
that
question,
kind of is
KS.
curious.
think I got the question. Seems like we're having a little bit of choppy internet. I'll keep trying to answer it and hopefully it rectifies. So, yeah, I did notice that I felt fine.
Oh, now we got to freeze up.
Oh wait, there we go. Now you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might be having just a little internet experience. Let me. Oh,
Oh,
I guess it was Ed's. I'm sure
Ed might be
he'll
be rebooting. Yes.
drop back in. He'll be DOS booting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still hooked up to the Skrill link.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not sure. I haven't done a whole
Eh,
lot of eating vegan, but like, how your body responds to that, versus transitioning into it versus just having a meal. It's,
right.
yeah, I don't know.
Well,
It's,
last week, I was thinking about food. So last week, and I eat, as far as any main parameters, I try and go really low on the cow dairy. I'll eat like goat cheese, stuff like that, but I'll try and stay low on the cow dairy and then definitely very low on gluten, so I don't eat that much wheat, but like, I'll eat like fresh bread or something. We go out. So we had dinner last week with Conrad and Nan, two friends of ours. Mika and I did, and we went over to Dang Burger, which is the burger place, and Ryan, their son who owns the Lucky Llama, his wine and beer bar, Sunburst Dang Burger, is in there. And so I ordered the burger, the hot dang, which is really tasty. They got like jalapenos in there and stuff. And I made the mistake, as I hadn't been there a while, of ordering a large fries. And it was like enough to feed a family. I mean, they were enormous. I saw the small fry when the stuff came up delivered, and I was like, oh, and maybe that's my amateur move right there, was ordering the large fries. And I didn't even eat them all, but I ate probably more than when I say should have, I don't mean like I was worried about calories because I was hungry, but just like from a full stomach standpoint, and then digesting the food. And as I've been dealing with some of my seasonal pollen allergies, sometimes my stomach gets upset when I'm going through this and I don't digest quite as well. But anyway, so I had the burger. I just go for the bun, and had the big fries. And there's like salt and stuff, which I don't have like necessarily an issue with salt, but I don't just put a bunch of salt on stuff. It's like, all right, not a big deal. My weight was about the same when I woke up the next morning. And then that next day, we went out and had dinner with Ann, Annie Bennett, our old teacher from middle school. And we went to Linden Square down here in Carp, and there's a Bettina Pizzeria, which is amazing. And we got a large pepperoni, a gluten-free one, and then we split, and we got like an order of bread and butter and stuff. But those two things combined was like, it took me like several days for my body to kind of come out of it. One day, and really the bun of the bun of Dangburger isn't that big of a deal. And Mika and I have gone to, Patina several times. We usually get the same thing, a pepperoni pizza, and we split a ranch baby gem salad and get to order bread and butter. But I don't know if it was the back to back or whatever, but both of us, or maybe the pollen, were feeling it a little bit, a little bit more. So
Felt a little sludgy, huh?
yeah, it
Like
felt a
just
little sludgy.
yeah,
And my
everything's not
weight
quite
was
moving
up
through.
by a couple of pounds for like 2 days, which doesn't mean I like actually gained the weight. It just takes a while for that to go through the system. And I think the back to back days and everything, your body, if you eat something that it kind of feels as like a toxin, I use the word like, gluten is mild for me, but it's definitely not great. Your body, I think we just got a message from Ed.
I sent him a message.
Your body puts the toxic those items into the tissues and then deposit in your tissues, and then you send water to flush it out, and so you hold on a lot of water weight. If you remember way back in the day when we first went gluten free, I think that was one of the things we both noticed is like a couple weeks into cutting all the gluten out, you'd wake up in the middle of the night and have to take a normal, like middle of the night pee that might normally be a 15 or 20-second operation. I would be like leaning up against the wall, almost going to sleep because it felt like it, just, yeah, doing it, getting all that water weight out of the body. Yeah, it was a big thing I noticed. So it's kind of interesting going back to back day, maybe just like a hard ride. Maybe one day of eating was one thing, but the double day or the back to back day got me two tough stages.
Two tough stages, yeah. Well, I've
Just the
noticed
stages
we
of
have a
gluten.
lot of like artisan bakeries and home bakeries and stuff up here where
Hmm.
people are using like heirloom grains, and I can eat that stuff and it doesn't bother me
Way
so
better,
much
right?
versus like the
Yeah,
processed or the multi-processed grains to make these foods, you know. Like I don't want to buy bread that's in a plastic bag, right? It's in a paper bag because
yeah,
I've been at like at our local coffee shop up the street, when the baker walks in or the delivery person for the baker will walk in and deliver bread that morning, it's still warm, and like,
oh
and
yeah.
that's a big difference eating that. So I think it's like worth treating yourself to a nice country loaf every once in a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I normally notice the same thing. If I ate like a piece of birthday cake or something that had like flour in it, but it was a cake mix as opposed to just like a fresh bread like that. Usually the fresh bread doesn't doesn't hit me too bad. I think maybe the fact that we added on, some excuse me, some fried risotto balls and things like that that maybe just were a bit
Oh,
more congealed. But I mean, even they were small, but even still, you ever had those? Or
oh
take the
yeah.
risotto and roll it? Yeah, those were pretty tasty. But I think everything kind of
A little
added
bit of
up
everything.
onto it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So
So,
we did get a message from Ed. He said it's slow grinding for him to get back in here
all
on the
right.
pod. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
well that whole I mean, I did the gluten-free thing out of necessity in
yeah,
2009 when I found out I had Lyme disease, and then um you know, it was interesting. I just stopped eating. There weren't a whole lot of options back then. There weren't
no,
these gluten-free grains or breads or all that stuff.
yeah,
So I just like, just cut it out. And I didn't own a scale or anything like that. And I did notice too that also I was like, all my, like I was to the last hole in all my belts and all that
right,
stuff, and didn't really dawn on me. And I took my dogs to the vet for their annual, and so I would get them on the scale, right? And the scale at the vet is like this big stainless steel plate, maybe
right.
3 by 4 feet or whatever. And you get the dog to sit on there and sit still for a moment. And I remember putting one dog on, weighing, and put the other one on. I'm like, I wonder how much I weigh. And I stood on that thing and I had lost like 10 or
I
12
remember that.
pounds. And I think a lot of it, to your point, was that water weight. It
Yeah,
was like all that
inflammation.
gluten was, yeah, inflammation in your body was holding that weight. So it wasn't even necessarily, I mean, maybe some of it was fat, but a lot of it was just that inflammation and that water weight. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, they talk about inflammation being like one of the key markers of health. You want to get your inflammation down because it negatively affects just about everything, everything in your body. So yeah, that was, dude. Remember back in the early days, there was maybe like one brand of gluten-free bread, and it was so bad. It was actually easier back then to go because you didn't really even have options to remind you about bread. You're just like, dude, that's terrible. I can't even eat that. Now they have a lot of great options. That's what got me to switch my morning two fried eggs on sourdough toast to egg tacos on a corn tortilla. That was
Yeah.
the beginning of the DS egg taco program.
Yeah. You just got to watch out for all that GMO corn,
That's
right?
correct. You got to get the
Yeah.
good organic corn.
You get
Yeah,
the
yeah,
good
yeah,
corn because if it's not one thing, it's another. I
yeah,
do remember that early gluten-free bread. I mean, it was literally like if you've ever chewed on a piece of cardboard,
yeah,
it was pretty similar sometimes to that, maybe
yeah.
not quite as sour, but
It
yeah,
was
that's
terrible,
it.
and even like the early pastas, they were like the early gluten-free pastas were you were cooking them and you check them, and they went from being like al dente to just like overcooked and mush in I feel like about 30 seconds. Like if you turned
Yeah,
the heat off and didn't strain it immediately, and they definitely didn't heat up well after that. Now they got some great pasta. That's probably,
yeah.
one of the things I'll do every now and then is whip up a pasta. I made up our old staple. We used to do a lot of times at the races, which is just the pasta, a little olive oil and butter, salt and pepper, garlic, and then some chopped up marinated tomatoes,
Of the
sun-dried
sun-dried
tomatoes,
ones.
the ones
Yeah.
in oil, and kind of put that through there. I whipped up a batch. We were, which to your credit, Mika is going. So if people don't know, Mika, my daughter, and Kurt have a joke going, and so your nickname is Sardine, which we could talk about that later. But she goes, one of the things I really realize I respect about Sardine's cooking, she goes, that guy, he can make something out of nothing. And it's not like just passing by. It's really good. She was talking about that, how it's like he seems to be able to look at items that you couldn't make food out of, and all of a sudden he's got something gourmet going. So she was giving you props.
I take pride in them. Well, and I figured that she must because she did send me a message earlier this week
Oh, did she?
looking for a recipe.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
looking for a recipe that I didn't have, a recipe for banana bread. She said she had some overripe bananas, so I gave her my pointer. Oh, Rico is
Rico.
back.
Yes,
Yeah.
nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were just talking about gluten and that part of the diet. We kind of rambled on a little bit about from the vegan add-on to the early days of going gluten-free and how the bread was so bad that it was actually easier because there was no good substitute, giving it
Yeah.
all up. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I
Yeah.
and I will say that if you do like to cook and you look up recipes on the internet, because there's another thing that right, internet's good for information, not necessarily for knowledge, but you can get information on recipes. And what I passed on to Mika, I said if you can find three recipes that are all very similar, like the way they're doing it, and
Yes.
there's a lot of good comments, then you're onto something. But like this one-off
Your
recipe
Venn
that's like
diagram.
not in that Venn diagram, it's way over there, stay away
Yeah.
from it. And then,
Yeah.
then once you do it a couple times, then you can start exploring. But
That is
yeah,
my definite vetting process of all sorts of things these days when there's so much information. Although actually, I guess I've been doing it for a while. I can remember probably one of the first times was when I lived down Temecula. Doing that overlap, and I was doing a biomeridian testing for supplements where they use your energy meridians and you hold on to a slightly damp brass thing that's wired, and then they touch your energy meridians and they say, hey, based on this impedance, this organ, is missing these nutrients. And I was like, all right, I believe this guy, but also maybe, how accurate is that? And in Temecula, they had the Ouch clinic, at the time, which was our sports med clinic. And so I waited until I had a blood test, and I went in the day before and I did the biomeridian because I knew they were going to take blood and I didn't want to do it after I had blood removed. And then the next day had it and compared the two results, and there was actually quite a lot of overlap. And so, to my point of the Venn diagram, I found that that's one of my best vetting processes. Just like you said, right? You pick a bunch of them and lay them over, and you're like, all right, the stuff that's way out on the perimeter, maybe, maybe not, but all the meaty stuff in the middle that everybody's overlapping, you're probably pretty safe. You're probably pretty safe if you stay there. So,
Lucy has a squeaky toy.
I was wondering what that was.
Yes. Of course,
Oh,
Robin's the
Lucy.
one squeaking it. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So,
So,
so back to that question. I'm curious. After your vegan meal, and kind of got part of the way
right.
through that, what did you, if anything, did you notice, like with your sleep, with your recover. I mean, it wasn't a big ride, right? It used to be your recovery, but just, or anything with that. Mute.
Oh,
You're
wait,
muted.
we're hoping.
Yeah. Tech. Still, we
No.
still got no. Oh, you rebooted your computer, so probably need your audio source to get
Yeah.
reset.
Yeah, to time back up.
Microphone source.
The microphone master, EMC. Oh, wait, no. There you go. Maybe not.
So we have Ed in sight, but not in sound.
Tech
So,
Rico.
mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The food. Maybe it's
Yeah.
for another day.
Yeah, maybe the
Maybe that's it.
follow-up. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we could always, although we have a few little spicy race biscuits, I think, to talk about.
Yeah.
One in the rear view and one in the out of the windshield coming up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, sticking to a food thing, because we all do like
Yes.
to eat. The three of us are going to be at Sea Otter cooking all time, camping the entire time. But on a little sidebar,
What's the sidebar?
I had talked about this earlier. I've got a couple of them here, but I
yeah.
think a little bit further into the year, we're going to review some
meat snack.
meat snack review. Yeah.
You know,
I find,
yeah, sorry.
like I say, that they're great, as a snack, but also as, ride food. Works out well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Like I told you, I've tried all those epics, but the bison bar is my one. It's got a little cranberry in there. Bison meat feels like it's just a little bit tart, maybe just a little bit. The
Yeah.
cranberry seems to go pretty well with it, but those are, it's interesting looking at that. It's very similar to like my Lara bar in terms of total calories for,
Yeah.
for the same amount. But obviously, I'm just getting meat. Those things are great, man. It goes right into the bottom of
Yeah.
your stomach.
Rico is back.
Oh, wait. All
Audio
right.
and video.
Okay, so you had asked him the question.
Yes.
Well, the long overdue answer. The delivery man was very slow, so we were really hungry. We
Yeah.
called the restaurant the Secret Kitchen a couple of times. So it was not super warm when it arrived, but I've had Plant Power several times,
Hmm.
probably a half dozen times. It's pretty good. You definitely feel better than if you had the equivalent, you know, meat version. Um,
Right.
and my recovery was good. So yeah, I think like my Whoop recovery, it was a pretty long ride. We rode pretty
Good.
rigorous 30 or 40 miles, and we were pretty darn hungry when the food showed up. So I think honestly, I really do believe that vegan is a fine route to go as long as you can get enough protein. For me,
Right.
I need protein from other sources. So
Oh,
I
interesting. Good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
did you guys follow any of the racing? Have you talked about it yet? Well, in
No,
my absence here.
we were waiting for you to boot back up. We were just down the gluten wormhole there for a while.
Yeah.
Gluten-free wormhole.
Gluten-free wormhole. Well, maybe we could make a T-shirt.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Ronde.
The Ronda.
The Ronde.
Yeah. What was your takeaway, Ed? Since you've
Well,
been missing here for a little bit.
I got up at 6, had my Flow account all primed on my TV. There's nothing worse than downloading an app and logging in and waiting and watching Whoop commercials while you wait for something to start,
Dun, dun,
Uh,
dun.
Yeah, exactly.
Background.
So everything was queued up and I enjoyed it. I was glad that I watched. I actually asked ChatGPT what time I should get up, and it gave me a very detailed answer of where they would be and what was what was a good time to watch. It gave you the 3 different responses, like a hardcore watcher, just wanting to watch the highlights, like it gave you different
Right, right.
times to tune in. So it was, it did a good job. And I don't think we could have had a more spectacular finish. We basically saw the top 5 finish individually,
Yeah.
all on an individual pursuit of each other. And we couldn't ask for anything better. I personally would have liked to see Vanderpool win. I just get a little tired of the predictability of Tade, and I was hoping for a miracle. But I think it was spectacular, and now we have a chance to see whether he can win all five in the same
Yeah.
year, five monuments. I would still remind the audience that Eddie Merckx won 19 monuments. I think Tade's on, what is this, 11 or
12.
12?
He has
Yeah.
12. So, yeah. Yeah, I know. That's pretty remarkable. Although you think about, yeah, I mean, it's always hard to do the math, right? It's like grand slams in tennis. You always think, oh, if you could win one or two a year, but then you could have a year where you don't win any.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
if he wins Roubaix, then he will have won all five. He also could, in fact, win all five in the same season as well.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that would be pretty wild. All five in the
yeah.
same season.
So now, yeah, I thought it was, it's just interesting to watch. And I was thinking about one sidebar, and it was in, maybe it was in the Saxo Bank. So this goes previous to the Ronde, but it was more of what I saw in the Ronde. Is we had been talking at times about, like, crashes in the peloton, and where what we think of some of the reasonings are, and we have been focusing on the equipment stuff. And I'm pretty sure it was E3, it was, and it was almost positive it was one of Vanderpool's teammates, and they led him into, I can't remember the climb, I think it was the Pattersburg. He came off a pavement and made a left and went up, and the guy that was at the front, he flew into the left and lost the back end a little bit, like entering it. He was the first guy, so if he would have crashed, maybe he would have got off the side. But I was thinking about it, that the racing. I mean, aside from the fact that, yes, Tade is winning, but the racing is very close. Up at the pointy end of it. And I think that just part of those crashes are that the margins are so much closer now, that you're looking for every single spot that you can try and make up time, and you're pushing, you're trying to get ahead of five more guys, and then you find yourself on the curb, or this guy, you're laying off the brakes because you don't want anybody to come around you as you go flying up into the cobbles. But he was on the edge. And so I think about just like watching the Ron too, and the attacks are just so hard, and even from the low level guys, and they're just going after it. It just, that was kind of one big takeaway that I had, is just like how good the racing is, just because they're just, everything's so critical and you can't waste time, and they're just going for it, and how they're just right on that, on that razor's edge between glory and catastrophe.
Well, and you really miss that if you just watch the highlights. You don't get
Yes.
to see all the racing that lets the final race for the win happen, because
Yeah.
there's so much going on, and the stresses. And I mean, we touched on this a few episodes ago. I know we did, about, like, is the burnout rate going to get higher because there's so much pressure for every race for everybody to be at the front. And like you said, DS, those margins,
Yeah.
the margins of error are so slim, and when it all goes well, it's great. And when it goes bad, it can really go sideways. So,
Yeah.
but luckily it was exciting. And, I agree. I mean, watching Pogacar just ride Vanderpool off of his wheel, I mean, it wasn't like there was any luck or any, you
Right.
know, shady moves or anything. It's like, and Vanderpool knew what was coming, and it was, I think, to his credit, he's like, hey, I just didn't quite have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens this Sunday when the parkour is a little bit different, not as much
Yeah.
vertical. Yeah, but that was really spectacular, Ed. And like you said, that five-way pursuit, like the top five favorites in the men's
Yeah.
race, all chasing each other one after another after another. I mean, they didn't have enough cameras, right? We didn't really
Yeah.
get to we didn't get to see, all of the chasing. We didn't get to see Wout as much. We didn't get to see Mads Pedersen, but they were all there, so it was really good.
Vanderpool was mispositioned on a climb. I think he didn't think that the action was going to go down quite that early. And so he
Hmm.
was mispositioned one time. That was a mistake. And then all the armchair uh, podcasters, armchair critics, are all saying, well, why does Vanderpool work with Poggy? Why should he just sit on him? Why
Right.
does he work with him? And I just love that he wants to beat him straight up. And I
Yeah.
like his fight. I like his fight.
Yeah.
And he had, his analysis of his data was that he was having all-time power, data and performance. So I think, he feels like he was there and was performing the best he could. Maybe being mispositioned cost him a little,
Right.
but I don't think it really would have mattered in the end. The other little moment that I think we'll all relish in a little bit is that Poggy took off his gloves on one of the climbs.
Yeah.
So I think all three of them were gloveless,
Yeah.
probably Vanderpool. And then
Yeah.
they're all
Definitely.
sitting there in the post race, getting ready for the podium. And Remco shows up with gloves on, and the other two give him shit. And they go, "You got gloves on?" And he's like, and he leans over and he just falls laughing in embarrassment behind him. And he's like, "Well, it's because we got some special glove sponsor." Well, Specialized is their glove sponsor. Really,
Right.
what it
Right.
was he had some sponsor here. So he went on the podium, and now you can't unsee that moment when you see those photos. He has his
Yeah.
gloves on.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
the new
podium
generation and their gloves were at it, or their lack of gloves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. That is pretty funny.
And you pegged it. You said, I wish Remco would ride Flanders, and it was secret, and that happened too. I think we touched on it a bit, last time that it was, the journalist felt lied to, but he did, and his debut finished on the podium, right? It was,
Yeah.
there was one point in the race there where he was coming back to Pogacar and Vanderpool
Yeah.
and was in like spitting distance, and Poggy looked back and accelerated, and so he was right. He did the individual pursuit the entire time because he was chasing Vanderpool and Pogacar, being chased by Van Aert and Pedersen. So that was quite a time trial. But that's like Remco in his natural habitat. But it was interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting
Remco
watching,
didn't
so.
have a lead moto in front of him. The others two did. So there's
Right.
you can
Getting a little love
pick that
from
apart.
the draft. Yeah.
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 The other thing that was
yeah.
interesting is there was one cobble climb. I'm not sure if it was the Koppenberg or the Paterberg or whatever one it was, where, pardon me for not remembering, but Remco
It was a bird.
showed a little ego. He went to the front, a little too much gas at the bottom of one of those. And I was just like, yeah, I know you're trying to show that you can do this, but that was like a little bit of an ego burn that he went through there.
Yeah.
Maybe a little amateur, baby amateur
amateur.
move. Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about something because, obviously we've read some of the same stuff. And one, I did see something about Vanderpool, him saying when they asked people people asked him why he rode with him. And he was like, he's like, I'm not going to just like try and sit on to win. He goes, we're going to be racing each other, like they're going to be at the pointy end battling it out for a long time to come. And it was, I don't remember his wording, but it was really like about sportsmanship in a way, right? That you just wouldn't want to like win that way if you're just like trying to sit on him, and I do respect that, that mentality. And so I was thinking when, to touch on what you brought up about Vanderpool, talked about, I was putting out whatever it was, 645 watts, and Tade's riding away from me. He goes, my power numbers were great. And then I started thinking about, Pogacar's aero bars. As we talked about, Vanderpool runs a classic, which I love. But I mean, if you think about even uphill as fast as they were going, when you're putting out that many watts, if you're putting out 645 with your arms out wide, or it's a little bit narrower, that would save you just a little bit of speed. And who knows if maybe as UAE have done what they believe for a tour rider, right? Is they're on the shorter cranks, a little bit more forward position to save your leg muscles, not have as much strain. Maybe something about that adds up. Maybe there is a part of that now that, they're putting out so much, putting out similar numbers, maybe Pogacar and Vanderpool, that maybe, in a moment like that, you can see that some of the technology that UAE are doing, maybe that gives them, maybe gives them a little bit of an edge. I don't know.
There is the whole body weight thing too.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't not looked that up. I've kind of thought about it, but not enough to look that information up. And then we're just going to get something off the internet that may or may not be accurate. But definitely there's a big difference, right, in the size of the riders, and therefore their body mass, and also, right, a bigger frame weighs a little bit more, right? Like all that stuff. So, his shoes are bigger because his feet are bigger. So his shoes, I mean, right, you put all that together.
We looked up, I think we looked up, and I couldn't remember if it was when we were actually on video or not, but I was curious how Vanderpool in his peak and Sagan in his peak stacked up, and they were really close in terms of height and weight. They're
Right.
both
That's
right
right.
around 6'1" and in the low 160s, I think, of race weight, 161, 2, 3,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I would think Tade's got to be in the mid 150s, probably,
Or high
just by looking at
140s.
him. Yeah, or maybe high 140s, depending on, what race, which you're right. If you're putting out the same amount of wattage, even if you were equally as aero and going uphill and somebody's carrying up, 8 or 10 pounds difference, that could definitely make a difference.
Well, Velo News put out an article about him having a little more weight during the classic season than he does for the tour. I mean, that's kind of
Absolutely. Yeah,
obvious,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they did cover that.
The
yeah.
very first thing that popped up is 146 pounds.
So
I
that's,
use the Google
Lucky guy.
yeah.
for
Yeah.
yeah,
So you're
right.
talking
So
15 pounds.
15 to 17 pounds just in body mass.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's pretty
And the
respectable right
late
there.
end of a really, really long classic that had all the seasons. It had rain, it had, all the wind, it had all the seasons. Those guys were tired. And so
Yeah,
that body weight really kicks in at that moment when he
yeah, yeah,
attacks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Roubaix body weight doesn't matter, so it should be pretty spicy this weekend.
Yeah, Vanderpool
It
train
does
keeps it
matter,
rolling for
I would
that guy,
argue.
man.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. I
That's
would argue
actually
that
good.
body weight does matter.
Not in the same way. And now,
Not in the
interestingly
same way.
enough, right, on cobbles, a heavier rider is probably going to stay a little bit more planted
Yeah.
on the cobbles than a light rider might bounce all over. So,
Yeah.
as the science goes, why, bigger riders do better on the flats is yeah, the weight doesn't, the penalty isn't as much
And
for
nobody
the,
rides those grass berms as well as Vanderpool. There's nobody.
he's spectacular on those. Just not even moving his hands to the brakes, just crushing it. Yeah.
So the
Now
train
there
keeps
has
rolling for him on Sunday.
Now there has been some supposed spicy sneak tech that Vanderpool's maybe coming out with. You were pointing out about the new road bike model has wider tires, and they were wondering if, is he going to run a fat tire for an advantage on the cobbles? But you had brought up something KS, which I guess would technically be under maybe under the blinded by, oh, it is under the blinded by science. I don't know if you want to pull from that. We can continue talking about the races and we can bring that up a little bit later
Yeah.
to keep with ours. But it'll be interesting, as always, just to see the technology that rolls out,
Yeah. Not the
rolls out for the
speculation
day.
on the technology, but the actual tech. Like we don't want to speculate here, but yeah.
Yeah, well, Visma had their tires glued on with,
Yeah.
probably, and then Red Bull had like some kind of sticky stuff on their sidewalls, some either additional
Huh.
sealant or something. They're all up to something. It looks like Trek is going to have a tire liner with a second inflator valve on it. I haven't quite figured that
That's
out. I
old
sent
school
that.
downhill technology.
Yeah.
2 tubes. Yeah.
Yeah.
2 tubes.
Or an insert that'll allow them to roll along a little farther on a flatted tubeless.
Yeah.
Did you see how the UCI came out and outlawed whatever 10 days before Roubaix, the hubs, which I don't think it's that big of a deal that they did it. I mean, for how many people are using it, the hubs that you can inflate or
Yeah.
deflate your tires, but just the fact that you already have all your race wheels built up, and probably got tires getting ready and going on, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, that's illegal now.
Well, that
Just
company
these
has gone
two.
out of business, so I don't know
Gucci.
exactly what was going on with that.
Right,
They
what
just
they're
went out of
using.
business last fall. So
That one seems to me like one of those ones is a good blinded by science, because it seems like for all the ways that it could work, everything you have to manage to make it work seems like overall just set your tire pressure.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
almost like creating a solution to a problem that kind of doesn't exist. I
right.
mean, flat tires do exist, but yeah, to your point, there's a lot
Yeah.
of energy going into a what if.
Yeah. So, but well, yeah, Flanders was pretty spectacular, dude. Just how about the crowds out there? I mean, like,
Yeah, the Belgian crowds, like, you got nothing on, right? Tour de France, these mountain stages, but the crowds, like every shot, that was insane. I think we were texting with each other. We're like, we just got to go there and hang out, right?
yeah.
yeah,
Watch bike
yeah,
racing and eat frites.
The women's race was equally spectacular. I think we had a spectacular victory there. Demi
Yeah.
Vollering soloing and looking amazing on her bike as she, rode away from them.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I mean, and what one thing that they got talked about a lot at the beginning is that both for the starters of both the men's and the women's race, Van der Poel and Lotte Kopecky both had the opportunity to be the only four-time winner ever of the Tour de Flanders.
Right.
And they both came up short. So now Todd adds himself to that list.
Right.
Vollering, she got the proverbial monkey off her back and won the Tour of Flanders. But, watching that race, because it was cool because they were racing when the men finished. So we got to dive right into more racing and how her team just like they just took command, like watching that team. It's been fun to watch, and maybe it took them a year to build that program around her. And then, getting all the buy-in from the riders and the staff and everything, but just how they took it to the front when they needed to. And you could actually see her. I saw a couple of spots where she was either talking on the radio or actually yelling to a rider. At one point, one of her teammates had like pulled off, and she's like, no, you got to get back. You saw the rider like went, but then they get back. It's like, well, hey, you pulled the plug when you still had some in the tank.
Right.
Yeah. You gotta empty the tank, unless there was something else coming up. But, watching her ride in that solo, once she got over the climbs and got down into the flats, and they did have a tailwind for both the men's and the women's race. So that's advantageous to a solo rider.
Right.
But like talking about economy of motion,
dude,
like I haven't seen anybody in the women's or the men's peloton that looks as spectacular as she does on the bike. I still go back to the women's tour last year, and that Maeva Skibon, the young French rider from the UAE team. How well put together was and how well she paddled. But I wanted to, I've got a little bit of a video of her, because if you haven't watched Demi Vollering pedal, then you're missing something, because it's like, it's kind of what we all learned. But yeah, so if you just, I can.
I think she needs more white in her setup.
More white.
Bike
Sorry,
and,
I went out of the full screen. Let's play here. There's that button.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't have the audio, but I mean, and it's like at this point, she's 42 seconds up, right? I mean, and this is a motorcycle that's right next to her. But hopefully we'll get some of the, the little bit longer shots. I mean, look at the suffer face there, right? It's not like on a Sunday ride. And DS, you were talking about your 1 centimeter of handlebar drop to stem. Like she's got that arrow position. It almost appears like she's got the ponytail tacked down, so it's not even flopping in the wind. It's not a fignon. But compared to these two, it looked to me like that, like they're pedaling in like pudding or something. It just looks heavy and labored. And they're trading turns, and there's the chasers right behind them that never caught. And so now they're 36. Like they're making some progress on her, but it just how much they're wobbling, and then you can see the wind, and you get these long lens shots. And hopefully we'll go back. We'll get one more shot of Vollering. But, Lotte Kopecky is in this group wearing number 1. I mean, she can see that podium right there, but they never catch them. So it was spectacular. So here we'll get a long shot. But you just look at how fluid it is. She coming in. Hey, at least those motorcycles are a ways away from her, huh?
Yeah.
We're waiting quite a bit. There's a camera bike. Okay, so that's the chasers. My mistake.
Yeah.
Right. So that camera bike looks ahead, but now they're like riding side by side. I don't know what they're doing there. I'm having a little conversation, but here we go. Back to that. Look at the difference in RPM. Right. And I mean, yes. Okay. We're with 8.5 Ks to go. So the fatigue has set in, but holding that position, like talking about doing your core work and having that strength to do that. Yeah. Yeah, Canadian guy that raced for me in 2004, a guy named Eric Wolberg, who was 7-time national champion of Canada in the time trial. And he would wake up, he would do like 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups every day. And he goes, Kurt, he goes, it's not, I said, I go fast. He goes, this position isn't comfortable, because people are like, oh, you look so comfortable. He's like, no, it's not comfortable, but I can manage an hour of pain. and
Right.
doing that work, right? You've got
Yeah.
five of the best riders here chasing. Anyway, I believe I've made my point. You can
Yeah,
the
that was good
YouTube
to
is good
see.
for this stuff, but just to see that stuff in yeah, she's spectacular. Here we go. One last
Yeah.
bit of economy in motion, as we like
Yeah,
to
when you
say.
think about how the difference between just frontal size, I mean, PFP is just small no matter what, but even still for how small she could get, and just look how good Vollering looks and how stable, just like you were bringing up, her torso is, and high pedal RPM, and the
Yeah.
pony, yeah, is dialed in.
All right.
She looks good. That was impressive.
Something to aspire for all of us to aspire to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so Paris-Roubaix, we talked about the
Oh
tech a
yeah.
little bit, right? So Sunday we got that coming up. Um, anything, any thoughts, any spoilers?
I haven't checked the weather to
Anything?
see if it's going to be wet or not, but
Well,
you know what?
we all
Yeah,
want to see it wet, but it probably won't be.
wet but not too wet. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
add some spice. Yeah, you know what? I'm really just enjoying the racing. I'm just going in. I just feel like there's so many good guys right now that it seems, it's nice to know that it's not just, it might have come down to Pogacar and Vanderpool on that final hill before Tade got away, but it just seems like there's so much talent out there. And Roubaix is obviously easier to control being on the flats, and then just the cobbles. I'm just like looking forward to watching. I'd love to see mods get up there and battle in a little bit, and Trek seems pretty strong. And obviously, Tade is chasing history. If he can win
Yeah.
Roubaix, that's all five. So he's going to be highly motivated. But I also think Vanderpool wants to not get shut out of of those three monuments.
Yeah. Well, and Wout van Aert coming on form. He does not have a
Wow.
Roubaix. So
Yeah.
Wout, I mean, hopefully, that would be for me. The ultimate day
Yeah.
would be to see Van Aert win Paris-Roubaix by
That would be
himself.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it fits his body type probably the best. So
Yeah. And
Yeah.
his form seems to be improving, and so he's dealing with the recovery from those injuries fairly well, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't do what he did at the Tour of Flanders by luck. Like, none of those five guys, top
Right.
five, were there by luck. There was
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it was, grit and determination, that power. So, yeah, well, we'll watch it, and yeah, we'll have to talk about it and the Sea Otter. We got a lot coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. Yeah.
well, it'll be Sunday morning on Peacock.
That's
Right.
right.
We'll be up early in the morning, as Cube said
Yeah,
in
well,
his
we
first
got
album.
inches of rain up here in NorCal, so he'll be running to the espresso machine, pulling
Yeah.
shots and watching the Paris-Roubaix. That should be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, Cube's second album up early in the morning.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, but it was a short, like a 5-song LP. So, or
EP.
EP. Yes, sorry
That's
about
right.
that. Yeah, yeah. There you go. So I don't want to free lap myself on some Ice Cube. He's like one of my all-time favorite artists. So
Good catch.
yeah, yeah.
I caught a free
All
lap
right.
for you earlier, so I'll let you know after.
All right. Good. Good.
Yeah, and I actually took a note. So, well, what else? That's it for the racing. You got anything? You have anything more?
Yeah.
No.
No, they're just stealing cobbles over there in Paris-Roubaix, and the race promoters having to put them back. So everyone wants a cobble for their
All right.
Like
fire
tourists?
play. Yeah,
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
Amateurs.
tourists, but they're constantly
Enthusiasts.
maintaining it.
Yeah.
So, blinded by science, DS, you back-to-back tests of some
I'm going to
tires, or
have
we got
to.
you?
So, in a previous episode, and what kind of inspired me a little bit on this was two things. Was one, your update on your electric pump, tire pump that we were talking about that replaces the quick fill. And, as we had talked about in an earlier episode, how Shimano had made the first major change to their mountain bike cleat. And I don't even know how long that was, 25 years or something, with this new, the CLMT001, but it's essentially the one where the front has some metal removed, some material removed to make it easier to get in and out, which it absolutely does. But I feel like for me in my riding, I've noticed areas where it's popping out when I don't want it to. I feel two things. I feel like one, and I really need to confirm it by, even though I don't have two identical set of shoes, I could just run cleats and then switch them and then go ride again. I feel like sometimes the new cleats allow my foot to get a little rock that the old cleats don't. And maybe if my weight's a little bit up towards the front, in balancing, that allows it to rock. But I've definitely had a few times, when I pedal, my feet are pretty straight. I'm not like duck foot, and I even toe a little bit. And on the upstroke, I've had it happen on both my mountain bike and my gravel bike, where I come into a section, I go to really pedal fast, and whoosh, and my foot will come out. So I don't know. The jury's still out. I like the ease of getting into it. But with my weight, I didn't have a big issue with that anyway, because I'm, whatever, buck 93. So I usually can have enough force to get stamped in. So I'm going to have to, I haven't had a chance to do it, but I'm going to switch out and do some cleats. Maybe I'll do that up at Otter, because I've got several of each, and maybe ride and go out and switch them out and see if we can get a back to back and see. I feel like that original SMSH 51, the OG cleat, I just feel like maybe it's a little more stably planted against the pedal in terms of rocking and rolling, or whatever you called it, pop and slop, I think was your SPD description, Ed.
Yeah.
Something
I run
along those lines.
the new MT-001s as well, and
Yeah.
I've come out cornering to the right. My left foot has come out, near the bushes.
Yeah.
A couple of times on the high side of the stroke, I think, is kind of where I want to say.
Mhm.
But you also want those things to release at some point. So
Yeah. It's always balance. It's always a balance, right? Yeah.
Ed,
Oh,
are you
yeah.
noticing that lateral DS? You're saying you're getting a little lateral kind of rocking, you feel like almost?
Yeah, but I feel like it's more, I feel the rock more towards the front of my foot, if that's,
which would make sense on the cleat design. That's a match for the new design.
correct. Would make, yeah, it seems like it would pivot. It would allow the sides of the front to maybe roll down and allow the back to roll up a little bit. Yeah, so that's where I feel that. And it's weird. I don't notice it all the time, but I'll go through something and like have to maneuver, and I'll be like, oh, like in a moment, I can definitely feel something. Exactly. I got to do a little bit of back-to-back testing to figure it out. But
So
yeah.
it's not necessarily like lateral rocking, but more when your weight is forward, it feels a little.
Yeah, it's lateral
Side to side.
rocking, but I would say if perfect lateral rocking was like that, I feel like it's front biased, a little bit like that. But like I
When you
said,
have weight forward on the cleat, then
yeah. Or as it rocks, it tends to feel like the front of the cleat is leading the charge of that rocking motion happening. So
because I was
yeah,
initially I was wondering if the depth of the cleat is different between those two,
not.
causing it's
the
the
depth
same.
is the same. It's only that front that's different.
So
Yeah.
then the contact of your lugs, the lugs of your sole and the shoe contact the pedal in the same way and have the same
Yep.
amount of purchase.
Yeah, correct. But if you think about, I should have had a cleat with me, but maybe for our deep dive later, I could see why it would be like that, just because the front isn't a flat right angle down, there's some material removed away. So that's going to be something that I want to follow back up on,
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
follow back
Yeah, you
up
could
on and
also you
see.
could use the word beveling. It almost has some beveling
Yes.
on the front
Yeah.
leading edge.
Yeah, beveling, chamfer, grind.
And then it's like how a normal cleat kind of breaks in and gets that nice polished
Yeah.
edge. It almost gets self-beveled from engaging and disengaging, engaging, disengaging.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll follow up with some cleat action on that one.
So I've
What-
been using
Yeah.
a couple of new products. I'm using them for 6 months. One is the Roto Luber.
Roto Luber.
If you can see this, it has a
Yeah.
little roto here,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to push the chain lube down between the links, which is where you actually need it.
Right.
I always thought you needed to lube the outside plate because that's the friction point, like in the rear cassette when it's shifting.
Yeah.
No,
the
it's
roller.
actually the roller. So the rotor lube has this little teeth that rotate through and try and push the lube down in between. So I use Demondi, the green Demondi chain lube, and that's
Mhm.
what's inside that. I think it's going pretty good. I think when I moved away from Squirt and some other wax-based things, that the Demondi, my drivetrain lasts longer.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's what my mechanic pointed out to me, and so I'm kind of going with that, and I'm going with my Roto Luber, which
Your
is
roto luber.
small gentleman here in, I think, San Diego County. He shows up at the races sometimes, and I bought one from him once. I couldn't find a website, but anyway, that's the
The
Roto
roto
Luber.
luber.
So,
The
a
the
question
Go
for you
ahead.
before you move on from the Rotoluber and that. So I'm like, for me, I'm like, I didn't know I needed a special tool to get lube down in between, into the rollers in between the, at the, as Matt Harvey from Enduro Bearing said, he says the chain is just like 150 little bearings, right? They're plain bearings. They're moving all the time. How often do you, and I think I might know the answer to this question, but like, how often do you clean your bike or clean your chain? Like if it's dusty, dirty, like do you come home and hose the bike off? Do you go a few rides?
No, I
And
go quite a few
specifically the
rides,
chain.
but I pretty much wipe my chain every ride. Um, I wipe the outer plates in a rag, and then I'm lubing a little more often than I think Demondi or my mechanic might think, because the concept there is you lube it a good solid first time, then you're wiping the side plates each ride, and then you might be adding a little bit more, and then you go until it makes noise. I lube a little more frequently than that. But I think their concept is that you're leaving a coating on there, and you can go a little while.
Mm.
It's pretty dry and dusty here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm addicted to chain lube.
Well, that dry
Chain
and
lube.
dusty is way more abusive on the components than that wet and sloppy stuff. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's muddy, this, that." It's like that dry stuff, especially like up here, we have a lot of DG, decomposed granite, and it's like grinding paste. It gets in there and works it. And you probably get that too when you get into the top cog. You're up in that big cog.
It's
It'll start
aluminum.
talking
It
to you.
squeaks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, oh, that aluminum, that cog. Yeah, it starts talking. So
yeah.
Yeah.
on the summer rides here, we always travel with the little pocket sized things of squirt lube just to have it because
Yeah.
Yeah.
multiple. I mean, we're getting lubes, multiple lubes on a single ride, and then that was the other thing I wonder. Like sometimes we come back and do the kind of the half clean on your bike, like hose it off and then maybe a little degreaser on the chain and the brush and just run it through versus
Right.
doing a full wash on it. But I find that helps with that longevity because as you've learned, as we all know, chains are less expensive than cog sets, but
Yeah.
that stuff starts adding up. So a little maintenance goes a long way, and chain lube is super important.
Well, I was shocked at the price of a SRAM chain. This is the first SRAM bike I've had in a really long time, so I was shocked how expensive the chain was. I couldn't even justify the top of the line one that came on my bike with
How
the
much
hollow
was it?
sight. Well, it was like, I don't know, full retail, like $150 chain or something. I'm like,
No way.
you gotta be kidding me, like.
Yeah.
But with the UDH hanger and the tension that's on there and switching to this lube, I don't really wear out cassettes and chains like I was with
Mm.
Shimano. So I'm
Right.
going a lot longer.
Right. Right. So I guess it all balances up exactly how you do it.
Yeah.
Well, I switched, I'm a Shimano dealer and they started carrying Motor X last year, which is a long time like lube and wash company. And they have this one dry lube that's really good. My only gripe with it is it's got a narrow tip on the applicator, and towards the end of your run of the lube, it can sometimes congeal a little bit and plug up the hole. And you're like trying to squeeze it and do it. But for my gravel bike and for my mountain bike, I've been using that, and it's really good. And I'll clean my gravel bike as far as the chain, like drivetrain goes, really getting it since it's all wax. I look and see if it starts to build up on the outer plate is kind of like my cue that I might give it a scrub. But usually some simple green and a little bit of soap and water and running it with a toothbrush, it cleans it right up. But that does definitely make a difference.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I'm
I can
cleaning
tell
my
you
bike every 2 weeks.
every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So even beyond the toothbrush DS, Home Depot has a grout cleaning brush,
Ooh, I've seen
and they're
those.
only a couple of bucks, and they're
Yeah.
like if a giant would have a toothbrush. That's kind of
Right.
what it looks like. But they work really well, and the bristles are a little bit stiffer. They changed
Oh
it a
yeah.
couple years ago, but it's a pretty good one. So that's yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'll have to check out the grout brush.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still simple green. Sometimes I use some of these trendy new bike cleaning products, Silka, or if somehow I acquire it in a sample or something, Silka or Muck Off or something. But I still use simple greens, soap and water, and then I use the compressor to blow out my chain. Now,
Yeah.
maybe that's a questionable technique. I just feel like it's
No,
blowing.
you got to use the,
You
yeah,
want to do
Yeah.
that.
yes.
So
You definitely want to use the compressor. That definitely blows that funk out of there.
Yeah.
sometimes I worry that cleaning my bike frequently is a little harder on it, but I don't know. It's a fine line. It's good for some parts of it and bad for other parts. And
You know, I just had a thought that I never even thought of until right now. And Muck Off's been around for 2 decades. And I realized because they're British, instead of calling it Muck Off, we should be calling it Muck Off. Because I think that's the spirit of which that company was named, Muck Off.
Muck
So
Off.
from now on, I'm going to try and say Muck Off because, you know, it's so close to,
Maybe we should go by and ask them at Sea Otter.
yeah.
yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Well, they
All
have
right.
quite the
Well,
bike cleaning
Muck Off.
station.
Yeah,
I have
they
some
do.
Yeah,
other
that's
products
great.
that I review, but I'm going to save them for a future episode. We're running pretty long here. So
Yeah.
any
Yeah, we
other
are running long.
blinded by science that you guys want to contribute?
I think I think it's a good time to muck off right now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All
I like
right.
that one, Diaz.
Okay.
So Muck
Yeah,
Off
Muck Off.
will
off.
be
Yeah.
we'll be at Sea Otter next week. So we'll be podcasting on Thursday morning. Oh no, Thursday afternoon.
Maybe
And,
in a little Wednesday afternoon teaser if we get in
Yeah,
and get if
yeah.
we get in and get our game on.
If camp is all set up.
Yes.
we hope to maybe pre-ride the Lifetime Grand Prix gravel course, which is the same for the age groupers as well. So
Yeah.
that would give us some inside take for Thursday morning at 9:30. I think they start out. So
Yeah.
thank
yeah.
you everyone for joining
wait.
us for episode 25. Your comments, feedback in the comment section below is very helpful to us, and share it with your friends, and make sure you subscribe. So thank you.
Yeah, hit the button. Push the button.
20